Yeah, we got more. Like there's always six pack. But what if they just choose to like move a lot of motions to like the next one? We're good. After doing all that setup. Oh my god. But the thing is we actually got it to work in like 15 minutes. Yeah, because we had like some sort of setup already. Yo, you shit. You? Yeah.
We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Huron-Wendat, Mississauga of the New Credit, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, known as Cataraqui or colonially as Kingston. The Alma Mater Society at Queen's University seeks to recognize the importance of these lands to the Indigenous peoples who have existed since time immemorial. The unjust acquisition of these lands occurred through the Crawford Purchase of 1783, a land treaty upheld by the First Peoples but later undermined by the British Crown and the Canadian government. This history of numerous broken promises and treaties continues to impact Indigenous communities today. As settlers on this land, we acknowledge our continued benefit from the systemic structures that marginalize Indigenous peoples. Recognizing systemic oppression, it is our duty to actively listen to and amplify Indigenous voices, addressing both past and ongoing injustices for meaningful, positive change. We are grateful to these lands for sustaining us and giving us the gift of life. This acknowledgement is a call to action, committing us to understand and respect the history and ongoing struggles of Indigenous peoples. We recognize that words alone are not enough. Our actions must reflect our commitment to justice and reconciliation. As a branch of the society that strives to connect student leaders and facilitate positive change and student advocacy on Turtle Island, we strive to maintain the core values and teachings from Indigenous peoples. As the Secretariat Office facilitates assembly, elections, and judicial affairs, we strive to ensure the voices of Indigenous and marginalized peoples are amplified, as well as provide resources on how we can facilitate and help in advocacy. As settlers on the stolen land, we must continue to educate ourselves and strive to decolonialize every layer of our governance system and curricula to indigenize our learning. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Choi, and I will be serving as Speaker of the Assembly. I'm here to maintain order, ensure fairness, and guide us through the rules of procedure. Please take a moment to scan, no QR code today, I guess. So I'm just gonna be going over some housekeeping rules very quickly. There are emergency exits. I believe there's the main one and another exit on the opposite side. And there are accessible, I'm not sure if there's accessible bathrooms, but the bathrooms are next to the stairs close to the giant museum in the middle of Sterling Hall. We will first move to motion 1, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the agenda for the meeting of December 2nd, 2025. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Yes. Okay.
Sorry, Alyssa Pariza, Vice President, University Affairs. I'm withdrawing motion 17, which I will touch on in my verbal report.
Amazing. I will call a vote on this amendment to withdraw motion 17. Please raise your placard to pass or approve this motion. Please raise your placard if you're opposed. Any abstentions? All right. This amendment is passed. Now I bring up the new motion to approve the current agenda with the amended withdrawal. Please raise your placard to pass the motion. All those in favor? Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Member Junziu of ASIS, just to withdraw the discussion comment and perhaps move it to the next AMS Assembly.
All right. I will ask for the voting for the amendment on the agenda to withdraw the discussion point and move it to the next assembly. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? Any abstentions? This amendment is passed. Are there any further amendments to be made to motion 1? Amazing. Now I will call the vote to pass the motion 1 with the 2 amendments proposed. Please raise your placard in favor. Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved as amended. Now we will move on to the reports. We will hear the reports from the AMS executive. Please note, per policy, these are verbal summaries of their work, followed by the opportunity to ask questions during the question period. Firstly, we have President Amr.
Hi, everybody, and happy last day of classes. And thank you so much for coming out for our CSGM as well as our SGA. It's amazing seeing so many faces out here today. And first and foremost, I wish everybody the best of lucks with their finals and their exams and whatever endeavors they may be going on during our winter break. Nothing too much extra to report on beyond what is already in my report, other than just there's a lot of really high year will bring. The team has been working really hard about getting ready for the next executive teams. We've been getting really excited for ratification assembly and what that means for the AMS and how we'll be hopefully taking our future executive to shape the future of the AMS. And other than that, really excited to just go through all the motions today because that's what the team has been working on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Vice President Nerzinski.
Hi, everyone. Final stretch before the winter break. If anyone has any exams or final projects, I wish you the best of luck, and I wish you a very successful exam season and a very restful winter break. I have no updates outside of my written report, so I will pass it off to VP Pariza.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Wanted to touch on why I removed the motion in my verbal report. The intention originally when it came to the approval of our statement was to rally the student body behind that and introduce students to Bill 33 further so they could understand what we're doing. However, unfortunately, as you all know, Bill 33 has passed, so we made the decision to move forward with that statement to make the student body publicly aware of what's going on. But we do want to take some time also to answer questions and share what we're doing moving forward with everyone, which will be touched on later. but I hope that provides some clarity for why I removed it. Other than that, though, no big updates other than from my written report.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now hear from our observer members. Each has 3 minutes to deliver their report, and questions can be directed during the question period. Firstly, we have Chairperson George.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. So not much to add for my report. I feel I might have went in even more detail than most regular monthly reports in those presentations. So I will leave it there, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. If not, there's nothing else in addition to my report.
Amazing. Secondly, we have Senate Caucus Chair Koner.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Really nice to be here today. I don't really have much to add to my written report, so I just want to wish everyone good luck on their finals, and I hope everyone has a good break. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thirdly, we have undergraduate trustee Kelvin, who is not present, so we will move on to the rector, who is also not present. So finally, we have ResSoc President Bay.
Hey, I have nothing to add to my written report, but good luck on finals, everybody. Happy holidays. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to statements by students. Statements, we'll first hear from statements listed on the agenda, and then I will open the floor for any other student who wishes to speak. We'll first begin with the chair of the Student Activity Fee Review Committee, CGO Horbatso.
Hi everyone, I'm providing an update on behalf of the Student Activity Fee Review Committee. We are currently reviewing all submissions received through the help desk, and we appreciate the patience of groups as we work through each file carefully. Our goal is to ensure that every submission is evaluated fairly and consistently. I want to reiterate the importance of full attendance at committee meetings. Active participation from every member is essential. Our ability to make informed, fair, and timely decisions depends on having all members present. So attendance is not optional, as it directly affects our capacity to serve students effectively. Looking ahead, we will continue reviewing deferred submissions and those for the upcoming winter application cycle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we will hear from the chair of the Equity Advisory Committee.
Hello everyone, Edward Tsai, they, he pronouns. I am the Commissioner of Social Issues Internal. Thank you to those of you who came to the Equity Advisory Committee. It was our first meeting of the year and it was really productive, also to understand what the purpose of this Equity Advisory Committee looks like. This is the first year that it is a standing committee, so there are quite a bit of overlaps with existing bodies such as Equity Caucus, so that was one of the main points of discussion. We passed a motion that endorsed the AMS Equity Strategic Framework, which we will hopefully plan to share at the next assembly and potentially involve the creation of a duly ratified AMS multi-year equity action plan, and will also help support the equity work being carried out in every single faculty society. In terms of the scope of this Equity Advisory Committee, we're planning to now meet monthly in the second semester with an emphasis on active ongoing discussion of faculty level equity work. So understanding how faculty societies and their relationship with their faculties in regards to equity work, governance, and how they interact with the student body pertaining to equity. In alignment with that, the SIC team is currently developing a faculty level equity report template and checklist to support all of the faculty societies in understanding what the status quo is for what each of your faculties are doing towards advancing IDIAA. Ask questions like, does your faculty have an equity action plan? Does it have a dedicated team or director or manager for EDI related work? And how does it engage the student body as it pertains to equity? So we're hoping to create that environmental scan of what's happening to help inform the SIC level advocacy with the university and working with Senate, while also enabling a better support structure for all the faculty societies and their equity commissioners or directors to advocate. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. At this time, the floor is open for statements from any other student, but first, we will go through the ones submitted to the Assembly portal. I invite Secretary Reddy to take over.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Reddy. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Secretariat. So we received this statement on behalf of a student here at Queens to present to Assembly. They're not present, so I will read it on their behalf. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Dos Santos, and I'm a first-year concurrent education student. Today, I want to speak about something that affected me personally and that I believe affects the fairness and inclusivity of our campus community, the way club hiring is handled, specifically for band cheer. Back on September 9th, 2025, I tried out for band cheer. I had learned the routine well in advance since the end of August, so I felt prepared. But when I arrived, I noticed the first concern. The tryout ended up being 3 hours long because participants had to learn the entire dance on the spot. Beyond being exhausting, it raised a safety issue. The tryouts ended late at night, and for many students, especially women, walking home alone that late is not safe. My second concern came during the audition process. I observed what felt like favoritism, whether it was towards people who already knew members of the team or towards those who fit a very specific look. As someone with curly hair and a curvier body type, I felt discouraged. I truly believe that with Queen's commitment to diversity and inclusion, I would be evaluated based on talent, not appearance. Growing up, dance has always been something I loved, but I've been told I couldn't be a ballet dancer because I wasn't skinny enough. Hearing that once is damaging. Experiencing something similar here, at a place I expected to feel accepted, was disheartening, both for how I view myself and how I view this campus. I'm sharing this today not out of anger, but out of hope. My goal is to encourage change in how band cheer auditions are conducted. I'm asking for non-biased evaluators, for clear and reasonable tryout expectations, and for a process that truly considers students of all body types, backgrounds, and appearances, not just those who fit a specific mold. Thank you for listening. I genuinely hope that these things changes. I can try out again next year feeling safe, respected, and confident that I will be judged on my ability, not on how I look. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further statements from students? Great. Seeing no further statements, we will now move into the question period. First, we will go through the questions submitted to the Assembly portal. I invite Secretariat Reddy again to take over.
Through the AMS governance form stack, we received the following question for the AMS Vice President of University Affairs, Parisa. The student has requested to remain anonymous, so I'll be reading it on their behalf. Could you clarify what's happening with the concert? In your report, you mentioned meeting with Western to learn how they planned Purple Fest and how the model might be applied at Queens. Wouldn't prior experience as an ORT concert director already provide the necessary background for this kind of planning?
First off, even though I'm not sure if they're here, thank you very much for the question. I'm really happy to answer this. With my experience as the ORT concert director, it will look very different in terms of how planning will look like for a future concert, because when it comes to that funding model, it is extremely different. As it stands, background information. The funding model was situated in a sense where the tickets would be included in orientation tickets from each faculty society, which has been discontinued. So in terms of ensuring that the AMS is able to provide that funding for a future concert, we wanted to meet with Western to see how they do it, how it runs when it comes to how they sell tickets, what other organizations are involved, and understanding that model. Because unfortunately, despite my experience, it is going to look very different in the future on how the AMS is going to approach it. So I hope that answers the question, but always happy to talk about that further if anyone ever wants to book a meeting with me or my Campus Affairs Commissioner, who we are both working on it together. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from the Assembly portal?
Through the AMS governance form stack, we received another question for the AMS Vice President of University Affairs, Parisa. The student has also requested to remain anonymous, so I'll be reading it on their behalf. Since the commissions are run by their respective commissioners, could you clarify what role you personally play in supporting them? Additionally, what initiatives, projects, or goals have you personally accomplished that go beyond the work the commissions already manage?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. In terms of the Vice President of University Affairs, there is definitely that support piece. And it's more so that oversight on understanding how they can all be interconnected and that AMS executive perspective in terms of being a manager, a leader, understanding what is happening when it comes to the AMS strategic plan and some goals for the entire year. So it's definitely being that leader when it comes to the commissions and having that oversight as a whole when it comes to them. In terms of my own special projects that I've been working on, definitely one has been trying to have connections with other members in the city, such as the BIA, or also establishing more relationships with other businesses as well that I've reached out to. There's some interesting ones internally that I've looked to past years to try and see if we can accomplish. One that I'm bringing up at a new established VPUA council that will be occurring this Thursday that is really exciting, something that I had in my, my campaign. That was something I really wanted to work on, so that will be happening this Thursday, which is exciting. And I want to look at potentially establishing a faculty society games that was done in previous years, which wanted to talk about on Thursday, so sneak peek, that's something we'll be talking about. But yeah, as well as some internal projects such as understanding what it looks like when it comes to financials and like where we can get donations from businesses and how that looks like when it comes to travel costs, seeing if there's ways we can save and perhaps save costs when it comes to like buying a AMS vehicle or like establishing a relationship with Amy's Taxi, stuff like that. So I hope that answers your question, but again, always happy to answer any more. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions submitted? Amazing. The floor is now open for questions. Please wait to be recognized before speaking. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, we will move on to business arising from minutes, followed by new business. We will now consider motion 2, that the AMS General Assembly approve an extension for the release of the November 18th, 2025 meeting minutes until January 19th, 2026. This motion was moved by President Amr and seconded by CGO Horbatso.
Hi, everybody. Wow. President Ammer, but just to speak a little bit on this, the team has been super busy getting ready for this assembly, as well as just getting everything ready and up and running for our winter referenda, as well as our winter elections. That being able to actually complete the meeting minutes with due diligence was just not, unfortunately, something that we could do within time of the submission for everything for the agenda. So this extension will just make sure that we can actually take our time and ensure that there's accuracy towards everything.
Thank you. Are there any speakers for or against the motion? Seeing no further debate, I will call the question. As a reminder, no one may leave the room while debate or the vote is taking place. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. We will now move on to new business. We will now consider motion 3, that the AMS General Assembly ratify Olivia Elmhurst as ORT Director for the 2025 to 2026 academic year. This motion was moved by ORT Director Elmhurst and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on the motion. Okay.
Hi, everyone. If I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, hi. My name is Olivia Elmhurst. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the incoming ORT director with the AMS. If you know me, you know I love orientation. Orientation's been my life at Queen's for the better, and it's really helped me make so many lifelong memories and connections with people that really have impacted my Queen's experience. I've also seen firsthand the transformative impact of fall orientation on the lives of incoming students, student leaders, and stakeholders. It's truly such an unforgettable experience, and I'm so incredibly privileged to be stepping into this role. Something that I'm hoping to do in this role is to streamline communication between all stakeholders to make sure that student leaders feel supported. A lot of volunteer work goes into fall orientation, so making sure that those leaders feel supported by the AMS, by stakeholders within the university, and just generally throughout the process of orientation. I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise, so nice meeting you all. Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, I'm now opening the floor for any questions for ORT Director Elmhurst. There can be up to 5 questions.
Emily Gluckman, CISA President. Hi, Olivia. What exactly is your history with orientation?
That's a great question, Emily. Thank you very much for asking. My experience in orientation goes back all the way to second year. I'm within the Faculty of Concurrent Education. Super cool. So I was an orientation leader in my second year at Teach. And after that, I moved into the role of head teach, which is the head of Concurrent Education Orientation Week in my third year, which was I can't even talk about it. It was such an amazing experience, obviously. And then last year, I stepped into the role of orientation student lead within the Student Experience Office at Queen's, which is the planning process for Tricolor Parade and Stadium Welcome, as well as Welcome Home Night. So it's been a long-winded process to get here, but I'm super, super excited to step in this role and to have such intimate connections with all of the student leaders.
Mika Heller, NSS President. What are you most excited for in your new role?
I think I'm very excited to see all the events come to life. I think since I was head teach, I've had some opportunities to see different events from different faculties, and just being able to see firsthand all of the hard work that student leaders and faculty executives put into these events, and actually being able to see them come to life, and the actual firsthand impact that it has on those student leaders as well as the first years. It honestly makes me so emotional. I'm always crying during orientation because it's so incredible. So I'm really excited to see those events come to life and to see that the goals of the faculty executives are really put into motion. Excited for that.
Retired Director Schnuda. Is there anything that happened specifically last year that really inspired you to finally take on this ORT director position?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of the qualities of my predecessor really inspired me to apply for this role. If you know Johnny, you know that he is such a shining light within orientation and really brings a sense of humor and a sense of joy throughout the entire process. As I was saying, fall orientation is full with a lot of emotions, and seeing Johnny be able to navigate that with such grace and such joy throughout the process, honestly puzzling to me, but so inspiring, and seeing how much he flourished in this role really inspired me to apply. So I think it all has to do with him, really. Yeah.
Not to ever inflate Johnny's ego, he is great. But what is one goal that you are excited about hopefully carrying out in your term as ORT director?
Yeah, another great question. I think a major goal of mine is centered around communication. In the past couple years of fall orientation, we've gotten a lot of feedback from faculty executives that they feel under-supported in terms of the communication from stakeholders, so not being able to access deadlines promptly or not being able to communicate with the people they need to in a timely manner. So I think really streamlining that process is a big goal of mine. Although it seems very small, I think it can have profound impacts on the experience of the faculty executives. So that's going to be coming into play with a Microsoft Teams that everyone from a student orientation leader all the way up to faculty executives and my ORT team can access, as well as different deans and designates and other stakeholders. So all information is readily available, because I think that's very important to ensure that the process runs smoothly and within a timely manner.
ask Olivia to leave the room while we call the vote. Yes. Okay, I'm going to call order to the assembly. I'm going to bring up a QR code. I ask that you guys fill it out. I'll give everyone 2 minutes.
Sorry, just a quick clarification. How are you actually making sure that members are part of? Okay, thank you.
Not asking you to share. Oh, sorry. Hey. I think the best way to approach this is we do have a list of all AMS members. So asking for your student number, similarly how the form stack would, we won't be requesting student cards. You just have to verbalize your student number, making sure that matches your name on our sheet, and then moving forward. How does that sound? So everyone's gonna have to make a lineup. I mean, yeah, that's fair. But we have to.
I feel like non-assembly people
should just the non-assembly?
Yeah, I think it should just be a non-assembly member.
All right.
Hello? Okay, so can all non-assembly members come to the front? All non-assembly members, please.
Everybody, um, just so you guys know, for the sake of the live stream, if you want to make a point of order or anything, if you aren't speaking into a mic, it's not going to be picked up online. So you might want to wait for a mic on that.
All right, everybody, we're gonna settle down so that we can continue with the assembly. Please take your seats. All right, everyone, please settle down. We will continue on with motion 3, where we will be taking the vote. As a reminder, motion 3 states that the AMS General Assembly ratify Olivia Elmhurst as ORT Director for the 2025 to 2026 academic year. I will now call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 3 is carried. Yes.
Prem, President of the Smith Commerce Society. I had a point of order. So do we have to reapprove the agenda or no?
Just a quick point of clarification, we had found that everybody was an AMS member. Everybody that's been voting has been seen as an AMS member.
All right. Olivia is now our ORT Director. Congratulations. We will now move on to motion 4, which states that the AMS General Assembly amend the principles and positions policy by inserting immediately after Section 24 tuition a new Section 25 titled Investments as outlined in Appendix A1. This motion was moved by VP Parisa and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on the motion.
I don't know how to work this out. Thank you. All right, hi everybody. Yes, as you can see in terms of A1, that is the overall proposal for the motion, but I do want to recognize L2, which is more clarification and is a memo about it. I will be presenting this information as well, but if you want that visual guide as well outlining everything I'm going to say, please refer to L2 as well. So as already stated, the motion reads that the AMS General Assembly amend the principles and positions policy by inserting immediately after Section 24 tuition a new Section 25 titled Investments as outlined in Appendix A1. So the purpose of this motion is to establish that AMS Assembly have the position to Queen's University that they must engage in responsible, rights-based, and sustainability-in-line investing that positively impacts all students, and calls on the university to align itself with the UN-recognized standards, including the UN Principles for Responsible Investing, or UNPRI, the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, or UNGPs, and the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Currently, Queens likes to recognize itself as a global leader when it comes to the SDGs, and is a signatory on the UNPRI. But at the same time, the university's responsible investing policy does not explicitly integrate human rights considerations or require human rights due diligence in investment decisions. Unfortunately, in recent conversations with Queen's University leadership, they confirmed that the primary lensment for their investment decisions is solely financial return, with no formal requirements to consider how these invested funds may contribute to serious human rights impacts. And on campus, we're seeing students experience grief, fear, and exhaustion related to global conflicts and harms. And many are concerned that the university's investments may be directly or indirectly linked to these harms, which undermines that trust we have in the institution and affects students' safety and belonging here on campus. The AMS's sustainability, equity, and principles and positions policies commit us to best practices, attention to disproportionate impacts on marginalized communities, and ensures that student funds are managed in a way that students can trust. But currently, there's a noticeable gap between the commitments of students' wants and needs and the standards set by the university. As AMS Assembly knows, but additional information for students here, the AMS Assembly is the highest decision-making body at the AMS for policy and advocacy, and it directs the executives in terms of their representation to the university. And through the policies that come to Assembly, the Assembly has already confirmed that the society values environmental sustainability, equity, and alignment with these SDGs. However, the Assembly hasn't yet articulated a clear stance when it comes to investment practices by the university. Additionally, the UNPRI provides a widely recognized framework for integrating environmental, social, and governance factors into these investment decisions. The UNGPs further established the global standard for business and human rights, requiring human rights due diligence, identifying actual and also potential impacts, and taking action using available leverage, tracking results, and communicating transparently. The SDGs, particularly SDG 12.6, encourages institutions to adopt sustainable practices and to report on their performance. And across Canada, universities and student societies at research-intensive institutions have begun adopting standards-based positions grounded in these UN frameworks, moving beyond ad hoc issue-specific debates to adopt consistent, principled approaches to responsible investing. These are those UN frameworks. So I come here today with this recommendation. The recommended option is for Assembly to adopt this investments amendment and the accompanying motion. The amendment states that Queens must engage in responsible, rights-based, and sustainability-aligned investing that has a positive impact on all students. It calls on the university to fully implement, resource, and publicly report on its UNPRI obligations, and to align its investment practices with the UNGPs, including explicitly integrating human rights due diligence into investment decisions. It further calls on the Board of Trustees to update the responsible investing policy so that it fully adopts and implements UNPRI guidance, integrates the UNGPs and human rights due diligence, and demonstrates alignment with the UN 2030 SDGs. The amendment requires the investment committee to publish, alongside the existing responsible investing report, an externally reviewed statement demonstrating the university's alignment with the UNPRI, UNGPs, and the SDGs. Finally, it calls for creation of a standing committee on responsible investing supported by the University Secretariat and including representatives from the AMS, SGPS, and the Human Rights and Equity Office to review annual responsible investing materials and provide that written advice to the board. This standards-based approach protects students, aligns with AMS policy commitments, and provides clear neutral guardrails for investments governance. It's very important to consider that the language in this is explicitly standard-based, nonpartisan, and does not target any specific group, country, or sector. It calls for the application of UN-recognized principles across all holdings with a focus on risk management and human dignity. The university, it's important to note that they may express concern about the cost, the complexity, or possible constraints on returns that may arise from these, but it's essential to emphasize that the UNPRI and UNGPs are already utilized by institutional investors worldwide as tools to manage long-term risk and reputation rather than a substitute of fiduciary responsibility. There's also a risk that students might expect to see immediate visible changes to these portfolios, or conversely may worry about the impacts on the financial stability of the university and on campus. Clear communication is going to be essential and very necessary to explain that the amendment focuses on embedding due diligence, processes, leveraging, and that transparent reporting, rather than prescribing instantaneous divestment from any specific entity. Finally, inaction carries its own risks. The longer the gap persists between public values and investment standards, the more trust and credibility are strained among students who feel directly affected and impacted by these issues. In terms of next steps, if the Assembly approves the investment section and the accompanying motion, the AMS executive will formally communicate the new position to the principal, the Board of Trustees, and Investment Committee, requesting a response and outlining the specific expectations outlined in the amendment. The AMS will also prepare clear public communications for students explaining what the amendment entails, how it will guide future advocacy, and how students can stay informed or provide input as discussions with the university proceed. So to conclude what this motion really means, this amendment prioritizes student safety, dignity, and trust by requiring that university investments adhere to responsible, rights-based, and sustainability-aligned standards that protect and support all students. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Member Drinzio of ASIS. This isn't a question, it's actually just to say that on the agenda, it says Appendix A1 and A2. A2 actually refers to a Bill 33.
Yeah, sorry, I provide that clear. A1 and L2.
Yes, okay, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't hear you say that, so I just wanted to make sure that
my
people
apologies, yeah,
who
A1
were,
and L2.
Yeah, okay, amazing. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. The policy itself for further clarification, is A1. That L2 piece is just the memo explaining this presentation and what I just summarized.
Mika Heller, NSS president. I was just wondering if you could give some clarification on what you meant by kind of the investing, because I know that originally when this had been brought up, it was clarified to be about environment. Now we're talking about weapons divestment, so I was just kind of wondering where that came from and what that would mean from an environmental standpoint.
Yeah, tying this back directly to my specific motion, this one only touches on UN frameworks. So this specifically is talking about that sustainability, equity, and human rights diligence and considerations as outlined in the motion explicitly. So this is tied directly to those UN frameworks.
Prem Spooner, Smith Commerce Society president. So I think an example would be supply chain due diligence, right, as kind of part of the principles on responsible investment. I kind of had more of a question around the composition of the advisory committee on responsible investing. In investment firms, they have dedicated sustainability experts, folks that are very knowledgeable about kind of these types of investments, as well as sustainability, impact investing, et cetera. Was wondering if you'd be open to amending to include experts within this committee, especially since from what I see, it could be seen as purely symbolic, given that as like, for instance, for me as a student, as a member of the AMS, I don't know a lot about principles of responsible investing, whereas I'm sure professionals do. And I think that their voice on the committee would be very important. So I would just kind of offer that as amendment, or just to hear your thoughts on the composition of the committee and what your thoughts were around that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really great point that I'm happy to touch on. When it comes to that advisory committee on responsible investing, this motion is specifically to ensure that those three key stakeholders, the AMS, the SGPS, and HREO, who can speak more so on that human rights due diligence and that student impact, are included, without providing that limitation of explicitly saying who from the university should be on it. So we wanted to leave that open because, of course, Queen's University administration and leadership are going to add who they see best fit to be on this committee, as makes sense. We just wanted to ensure we didn't limit ourselves with this motion, but did move forward to ensure that student voices are included. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Any further questions?
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Seeing as there were no further questions, I will now call the question regarding motion 4. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 4, apologies, is carried. Moving on to motion 5, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the following amendments to the awards policy as seen in Appendix B. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on the motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. I'm bringing forward 2 amendments to the awards policy for approval. So the first amendment is regarding the Chief Governance Officer's role as written policy attached as in Appendix B. So the current wording in the policy does not clearly reflect the CGO's established responsibilities within the awards process, more specifically within the committee's part of the awards process. So in practice, the CGO sits on every award selection committee as both vice chair and scribe. So this administrative structure already guides how committees operate, but the policy language has not accurately captured it yet. So the proposed amendment updates the text to clarify the CGO's position and formalize their duties. The second amendment, also attached in Appendix B, is to the nominations timeline. So right now, Section 3, Clause 1A and B, provide an outline of what the awards timeline is supposed to be like, but in the policy, it is not consistent. Therefore, I am bringing to revise the wording and standardize the nomination period so that they follow a clear, predictable structure every term. This helps student groups, nominees, and our communications team prepare effectively, fairly, and reduces confusion about when nominations open and close. These proposed changes strengthen operational clarity, support students engaging with the awards process, and ensure that the policy accurately reflects the way the Secretariat and its committees will proceed.
Thank you very much. Debate is now open. Are there any speakers for or against the motion? Seeing as there is no debate, I will now call the question. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 5 is carried. Moving on to motion 6, which states that the AMS General Assembly approved the Winter Awards timeline as seen in Appendix C. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
Okay, guys. Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. I'm bringing forward the proposed Winter Awards timelines for approval. These dates follow the updated nomination period structure and ensure we have enough time for nominations, committee reviews, and final selection. So the proposed timeline is as follows, as also shown in Appendix C. Monday, February 2nd, 2026, Winter Award nomination period opens. Monday, February 23rd, 2026, Winter Award nomination period closes. And then Monday, March 16th, 2026, award recipients announced. Thank you.
Thank you. Debate is now open. Are there any speakers for or against the motion? Seeing as there is no debate, I will now call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 6 is carried. Now considering Motion 7, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the re-ratification of the Club Advisory Committee membership to serve as the selection committee for the club awards, as outlined in Appendix D. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on the motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. I am bringing forward the re-ratification of the Club Advisory Committee membership to serve as the selection committee for the club awards. The committee consists of members as outlined in Appendix D. This committee is responsible for overseeing the review and selection process for the club awards. As we move closer to the awards timeline in the new year, the committee will begin meeting more regularly to ensure a smooth, fair, and timely selection process. The Club Advisory Committee has a mandate to approve all grants associated with a student activity fee under the club's commission, to approve and review all applications relating to club ratification, and to award club awards on an annual basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Debate is now open. Are there any speakers for or against the motion? Seeing as there is no debate, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 7 is carried. Now considering Motion 8, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the ratification of the Sustainability Advisory Committee to serve as the selection committee for the Sustainability Awards, as outlined in Appendix E. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. I am bringing forward the re-ratification of the Sustainability Advisory Committee membership to serve as the selection committee for this year's Sustainability Awards. The committee consists of members as outlined in Appendix E. This committee is responsible for overseeing the Sustainability Awards review and selection process. The Sustainability Advisory Committee has a mandate as follows: to disperse all grants associated with the Sustainability Action Fund, to select and award the Environmental Champion Award, and to, on a triennial basis, review the sustainability policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Debate is now open again. Are there any speakers for or against the motion? Seeing as there is no debate, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 8 is carried. Moving on to Motion 9, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the re-ratification of the Equity Advisory Committee to serve as the selection committee for the Equity Awards, as outlined in Appendix F. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. I am bringing forward the re-ratification of the Equity Advisory Committee membership to serve as the selection committee for this year's Equity Awards. The committee consists of members as outlined in Appendix F. Note that the Indigenous lead participates only in the selection of the 7 Grandfather Teaching Awards, and the Black Initiatives lead participates only in the selection of the Robert Sutherland Prize. This committee oversees the review and selection process for the Equity Awards, 7 Grandfather Teaching Awards, Robert Sutherland Prize, as outlined by the awards policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Debate is now open. Are there any speakers for or against this motion? Yes, Commissioner Sai.
Commissioner of Social Issues Internal, Edward. Just a small amendment again. Majida Lakiti is Commissioner of Social Issues External. This caused a bit of confusion last time when we were trying to meet.
Thank you very much. Are there any further comments? Amazing. We will now call the question. All those in favor? Oh, yes, sorry.
Point of order, primarily Spooner Smith Commerce Society president. So then can we just make an amendment to change Commissioner of Social Issues External, or is like the name incorrectly written? Yeah. So it's currently incorrectly written in the appendix, right?
It's just the role title that currently is wrong. So when it serves as a selection committee, it is the Social Issues Commissioner External that is the chair, and the internal is not a member of that.
So should the title be changed on the appendix? Okay.
The position name. Yes, that's what I'm referring to. Yeah.
All right, I will call a vote to the amendment to change the position name within the motion. Please raise your placards in favor. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Are there any further debates for this motion? All right, I will call the question for the amended motion 9. Please raise your placard in favor. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 9 is carried. We will now consider motion 10, which states that the AMS General Assembly appoint a voting member of the Assembly to the Equity Advisory Committee. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. So deriving from the previous motion, we are looking to appoint new members to the Equity Advisory Committee that will act as the selection committee for equity awards. We are asking the voting members to volunteer, one voting member to volunteer for this position at the moment.
Sorry, President Ammer, just will make an amendment to change social issues external for Majida, and as well the additional seat is because our lovely Mika will unfortunately be leaving us. So anyone that is a voting member, it's a first come, first served basis, and then you would be ratified.
Sorry, just Claire's going to take over from me when she's. Okay.
Any other points for debate? Yes, Commissioner Sai.
It's like a point of clarification. So we're on motion 10, right? Appointment to Equity Advisory Committee. Are we referring right now to it as a selection committee or just the Equity Advisory Committee? For both, so that this, I guess, picture on the screen right now isn't technically correct.
Yeah, we'll make sure to add Edward's name on there as the Commissioner of Social Issues Internal, and then Majida will be Commissioner of Social Issues External, so we'll move that as an amendment at the same time we would ratify the new voting member.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. I will now call the question for the amendment made on the motion. All those in favor for this amendment, please raise your placard. Those opposed? Any abstentions? The amended motion is now going to be called into question unless there are more points of debate. Oh, we need one more voting member for this position. Please raise your placard if you are interested in this.
I'm Claire Nolly, and I'm the incoming NSS president.
All right, I will now call the question for this motion with its amendment. Oh, yep, sorry.
Just to go back to the assembly policy, just to ensure that we're aligning ourselves with the purpose of the Equity Advisory Committee, especially as a selection committee as well, is that these appointments are reserved for voting members of assembly who self-identify as equity deserving and marginalized, including but not limited to individuals who are Black, Indigenous, racialized, 2S LGBTQI+, disabled, or otherwise underrepresented at Queens. Just wanted to reiterate that because I think the first time we did this wasn't said as well. Not pointing at anyone specifically, just putting that out there.
Thank you. President Ammer, do you have a point?
With that, would you recommend a different voting member be ratified or appointed to it? No? Okay, so just like a point of information then.
so we could go forward. Okay.
All
Can
right.
you please call the question.
I will now call the question for motion 10 and its amendment. Please raise your placard for favor. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 10 is now carried. We will now consider motion 11, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the appointment of the Teaching Award Selection Committee as outlined in Appendix G. This motion was moved by Secretary Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. The Teaching Award Selection Committee administers the Frank Knox Award for Excellence in Teaching, Christopher Napper Award for Excellence in Teaching, and the Undergraduate Research Mentorship Award. We are looking for voting members to volunteer for the committee at the moment. The Teaching Award Selection Committee plays an important role in recognizing outstanding instructors and supporting excellence in teaching across the university. To ensure a fair and representative selection process, we need 3 voting assembly members to join the committee.
Please state your name and position.
Emily Gluckman, CISA President.
Thank you. Any other voting members?
Isabel Koch, ACES Rep to the AMS.
Thank you. And we need 1 final voting member.
Daria Molev, CISA First Year Representative to the AMS.
Thank you very much. All right, is there any debate for this motion? All right, I will now call the question. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 11 is carried. I will now move on to motion 12, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the appointment to the Executive Award Selection Committee as outlined in Appendix H. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on the motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. The Executive Award Selection Committee refers to the committee with the mandate to administer AMS Staff Awards, AMS Letter Award, and AMS Volunteer Awards, as well as Peer Support Award. Similar to the last motion, we are looking for voting members to volunteer for the committee at the moment. 3 specifically.
Please raise your placard and state your name and position if you are interested.
Come on, guys.
Thank you. Alan Savini, ACES representative to the AMS.
Thank you. We need 2 more voting members.
Cynthia Schrepp, VIXA President.
Thank you very much. We have 1 final position.
Hugh Tuckwell, President of CompSA.
All right, is there any further debate or questions for this motion? All right, I will call the question regarding motion 12. All those in favor, please raise your placard. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 12 has passed. We will now consider motion 13, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the appointment to the Committee on External Alignment as outlined in Appendix I. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. So the mandate of the Committee on External Alignment is that the committee assesses the membership of the Alma Mater Society in external organizations as required by the Constitution. To that end, the mandate of the committee is to A, review membership in external organizations as required by the Constitution. B, make recommendations to Assembly on the continuation of membership in such organizations. And C, review financial reports and spending of student fees associated with external organizations, as well as D, release a report for the benefit of Assembly which summarizes findings, strengths, benefits, and costs of membership in such organizations. If you're interested in serving on this committee, please indicate your interest. Similar to the last one, we need 3 voting members. Anyone up for grabs?
Elena Nerzinski, VPOPs for the AMS.
Two more volunteers.
Prime Meta Spooner, Smith Commerce Society President.
Thank you. One final volunteer.
Daria Mola, CISA representative to the AMS.
Oh, thank you. Is there any debate regarding this motion? Seeing as there is no debate, I will call the question for motion 13. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 13 is carried. We will now consider motion 14, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the ratification of the Committee on External Alignment to serve as the selection committee for the Civic Responsibility Award as outlined in Appendix J. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on the motion.
Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. So the Civic Responsibility Award is given to a student at the university who has significantly contributed to the Kingston community. The student contribution may be through volunteering with one or more Kingston organizations or with a student group that performs volunteer work in Kingston. Selection will be made by the Committee on External Alignment, be it approved by the Assembly.
Thank you very much. Is there any debate on this motion? All right, seeing as there is no debate, I will call the question regarding motion 14. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 14 is carried. Moving on to motion 15, which states that the AMS General Assembly approve the winter election timeline as seen in Appendix K. This motion was moved by Secretariat Reddy and seconded by President Ammer. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
Again, Rachel Reddy, Secretariat. I am bringing forward the proposed winter elections timeline for approval. These dates have been developed to ensure a clear, accessible, and well-structured election cycle for all candidates, teams, and student voters. The proposed timeline is as follows. December 12, 2025, deadline for validation package submissions. January 5th, 2026, elections begin. January 8th to 9th, 2026, elections and referenda information nights. January 19th, 2026, all candidates meeting and ratification assembly. January 21st, 2026, campaigning period begins. January 23rd, 2026, candidates debate. January 27th, 2026, campaigning period ends. And then January 28th to 30th, there's the voting period, 2026. And then January 31st, 2026 is the elections reveal night.
Are there any speakers for or against this motion? Yes.
Hi, Alexander Wangma, Chief Electoral Officer. I'd like to amend the motion to move the information night for the executive elections to January 7th and 8th instead of as it is presented on January 8th to 9th. This would separate the elections and referendum information nights into 2 different categories. So elections would be on 7th to 8th and referendum information nights would be on 8th to 9th. This would just give our team more time to brief candidates, especially because there's a document they have to submit by the 15th, and we feel that concluding information nights on the 9th wouldn't give them enough time.
Thank you very much. I will call the question for this amendment. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? The amendment is approved. Are there any further debate or speakers for the debate for this motion? Yes, Commissioner Sai.
I just wanted to note that two of these dates coincide with some of the religious observances, as stated in the Queen's Multi-Faith Calendar, specifically for January 23rd and January 19th, as those dates are specific events. Just wanted to note that in case candidates identify with those particular religious identities and amend potentially those dates. Oh, January 23rd, the candidate debate, and then January 19th, the all candidates meeting. So January 19th, there is a Eastern Old Orthodox Christianity celebration, which may require religious accommodation as per the Queen's Multi-Faith Calendar. And then the 23rd, for Hinduism, there is a religious observance that may require accommodation.
Just to speak a little bit to your point, yes, we are aware of those. We have tried our absolute best to make sure that this timeline is as comprehensive as possible. January 19th is an approved ratification assembly, so the all candidates meeting will be happening during that as well. Accommodations will always happen to people that need religious observances, as well as if needed for the candidates debate, that will also be seen there.
That makes sense, as long as it's clear that they may request accommodations.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Is there any further debate for this motion? Yes.
Alexander Wangma, CEO. I'd like to amend the candidates debate to be held on the 26th of January as opposed to January 23rd. I think this works just better for Mira and I's time commitments, as we'll be moderating the debate. And we also think that we also feel that having it on the 26th will give us more time to prepare more relevant questions, as we definitely want to make sure that the questions are specific to each role and that candidates feel comfortable answering all questions.
Hello. Elena Nerzinski, Vice President of Operations. I believe the reason for moving the candidates debate to the 23rd and having it on that date is so that it can allow the candidates to participate in the debate in the middle of their campaign period, so they can kind of use that as an opportunity to discuss more about their platforms and use maybe the couple days beforehand during their campaign period to engage people to come to the debate. Hopefully more people will attend. I know attendance was quite low last year. So that's the reason why that date has been chosen.
Yes, President Amer?
I think this might be a good time to maybe ask, in terms of a lot of our internal discussions were around whether we'd host it on the 22nd or the 23rd. Staying away from the 26th, mainly since campaigning period ends on the 27th, and students do deserve ample time to research the potential candidates and also just have a lot of ample opportunity to hear from them, rather than just only getting a chance to ask their candidates questions a day before we go into voting, when all campaigning does need to end on the 27th at 8 p.m. So maybe if there are any thoughts around hosting it one day after the campaign period begins, or keeping it the 23rd.
Thank you, Alexander Wangma, CEO. Thank you, Jana and Elena. We hope to have it at the end of the campaigning period, or at least before the end of the campaigning period on the 26th, and have the campaigning period end on the 27th. This way, the students have an opportunity to research the candidates. They still have a window, a day's window to go for researching candidates, and we feel that having it on the 23rd would be too soon.
Other speakers for this amendment? All right, I will call the question for this amendment. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? The amendment has passed. All right, now I will call the question on the amended motion. Please raise your placard in favor. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion fails. Moving on.
Sorry, Emily Glockman, CISA President. I'm just quite confused on what just happened.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
So the motion with the amendment to move it to the 26th has just failed, which means that we still have the current motion as the way it stands with all the correct dates. We get the opportunity to re-vote on this with that as it currently stands. So don't worry, we can still have an elections timeline, okay? We can still have an elections timeline.
All right, I will now call the question for the initially amended motion 15 with the first amendment. Please raise your placards in favor. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Could you raise your placards again if you approved it or in favor? Okay, thank you. The motion has carried. Now we have a timeline. Moving on to motion 16, which states that the AMS General Assembly defer the Sustainability Goal Plan Progress Report until January 19th, 2026. This motion was moved by Commissioner Schmidt and seconded by CGO Horbatso. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
Hello, everybody. Commissioner Brooke Schmidt, Commissioner Environmental Sustainability. Unfortunately, I have not received a large quantity of sustainability goal plan progress reports. So in order to provide a comprehensive update on the wonderful sustainability work that everybody's been doing, I would like to push this to January. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there any speakers for or against this motion? Seeing as there is no debate, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion 16 is carried. Motion 17 was amended, so we'll move by. All right. We will now consider the final motion 18. That the AMS General Assembly direct the CRO or the Chief Returning Officer to place the following non-fee plebiscite question onto the 2026 winter referenda as seen in Appendix M. This motion was moved by Jessica Shaughnessy and seconded by Aishnika Sainthan. I now invite the mover to speak on this motion.
everyone. My name is Jessica Shaughnessy. I'm a student here, undergraduate.
And I'm Ashnika Saindan, also an undergrad student here.
So we propose this motion. We're here to discuss the motion to add the following question to the winter 2026 referenda. Do you agree that Queen's University's investment portfolio should be in compliance with recognized international standards of ethical and sustainable investment, including the UN Principles for Responsible Investment, and no longer invest in financial sectors or institutions identified as presenting ESG or humanitarian risks? And aerospace and defense is our little example. Okay, so we've prepared a short presentation, and we're just going to go through it. Okay, so Queens has stated its repeated commitment to upholding sustainable principles following the UNPRI, and this is reflected within the university's promises to consider ESG within their investment pool. And we've included a quote from the 2025 Responsible Investing Report, which highlights the university's status as a signatory under the UNPRI. This pledges the university to continue maintaining its ethical and fiduciary responsibilities and practices with respect to those goals. The foundation of this framework, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this, but we just decided to include it anyway. It's comprised of ESG factors, which encompass the environmental, social, and governance of ethical investing. UN-supported principles for responsible investment signatories commit to incorporating ESG considerations seriously into their investment decisions, ownership, and reporting practices.
Broadly, all investments within Queen's investment pool can be classified under the GISC, Global Industry Classification Standard, which is a widely used system for the categorization of publicly traded companies based on sector types and their respective sub-industries. Keeping in mind these UN principles, students have expressed repeated concerns over many of these investment holdings, which do not align with or seriously undermine said commitments towards ethical and responsible investing. Continued investments within industry sectors directly in opposition to UN environmental sustainability and protection of human rights directives, such as within the GISC sub-industry, aerospace and defense, highlight this issue. This sub-industry fails under the GICS industrial sectors and encompasses all manufacturers of civil or military aerospaces and defense equipment, parts or products including defense electronics and sub-equipment. According to the university investment records, Queen's has invested roughly $5.6 million within facilities which are directly linked to weapons manufacturing, including companies like Boeing, Elbit Systems, Lockheed Martin, and more.
Okay, and then, so we've also just prepared kind of an overview. This is the broad sentiment amongst the student opinion. So several concerns have been raised by various student groups and faculty, particularly in the past few years on campus. Some groups advocate for complete divestment and an academic boycott from institutions complicit in genocide and war crimes. And additionally, students have been arguing that the university is not achieving meaningful change in order to cut financial ties from fossil fuel companies, despite stated commitment to climate goals. Broadly, this is the student opinion. It seems to highlight these issues regarding the nature of Queen's shared investment pool. So just to go over, we've broken down some in two parts, like ethics and sustainability concerns. Human rights issues include the risk of increasing harm caused by end-use applications, particularly when these products are employed by governments or groups acting in breach of international humanitarian law. And additionally, these investments in companies implicated in the erosion of indigenous rights, such as Enbridge, highlighted, which constructs pipelines through indigenous land and violate treaty law. These remain significant issues, particularly for indigenous students on campus. And there are also heightened risks tied to political instability and corruption. Arms purchases, as they can increase the likelihood of civil conflict over time and are often concentrated in countries with documented corruption risks in their defense and security sectors. And the continued investment within weapons manufacturing raises the possibility of violations, again, of international law, especially if those products are indirectly or directly linked to acts of genocide, war crimes, or breaches of the UN and humanitarian regulations. globally. Environmental impacts on the other side, some things that we've concerns amongst students heavily factor within this discussion, such as the metal and organic pollution from weapons use and military infrastructure, leading to land contamination, exposure to toxic compounds, chemical agents, and significant land and wildlife destruction over time. And then finally, again, these increased, these investments within the aerospace and defense sector and other sectors also produce a high carbon footprint with that risk. Armed forces and their supply chains estimated generate roughly 5% of global CO2 emissions, adding to the growing concern about sustainability on campus.
It is important to note that these concerns are one and the same, as matters of human rights and ethics are fundamentally linked with environmental climate justice. As the proposed question within the motion highlights, these concerns are not exclusive to the defense sector, but are subject to all financial holdings and scholastic links to any institutions which pose a significant risk of violating ESG factors. As Nicolaj Pedersen from the UNPRI states, information technology, communication services, and industrials, for example, could also carry risk if their products and services are used to contribute to harm, directly or indirectly, in conflict zones. Given the ongoing concerns raised by Queen's University's investment pool, it is increasingly important that students have a clear and democratic avenue to express their feelings and views. Adding a non-binding, non-student fee plebiscite question on university's investment to the winter 2026 student referendum would ensure that all students, regardless of their stance, have the opportunity to voice their perspective on how Queen's investment align with its values and long-term responsibilities. The AMS could provide this opportunity for a safe and easy way to help address these concerns on the undergraduate level, as it is clear that this issue lies at the heart of many students who are concerned over their university strategy for meaningful change. And thank you for listening. Okay.
And we'd invite any questions that anyone might have from Assembly.
Mika Heller, I was just wondering where you got this student data and if you can share a little bit more about it, because when we're talking to students, this isn't a main concern on their page. So I was just wondering where your data is, because it's very different than the data that the faculties are hearing. Absolutely.
So this isn't necessarily pulled from one data source. It's not quantified. What we're picking up on campus as undergraduate students isn't necessarily linked to one particular study. Like I said, it's generally just speaking to the concerns of students that broadly on campus. We've seen particular in the past couple of years advocacy on particularly the matters regarding ethics and human rights. And this is a point that is returning and has been spoken to also at Assembly with this gap between the student undergraduate body and then the nature of the Queen's investments at the administrative level. So it's not, what we're trying to advocate for is that the AMS provide and facilitate an avenue, a safe and democratic avenue for students to express their opinion regarding these investments, because this seems to be a pressing issue amongst the student body in recent years. If that answers your question. Sorry.
Hi there, Prem Spooner, Smith Commerce Society President. I want to say thank you for coming in first for your presentation. I can tell that you put a lot of time into it, so I just wanted to start by saying that. Kind of going to the question, for me, when I read it, it's more so framed around kind of gauging students' specific opinion on industries, right? Rather than the actual frameworks. And we just passed a motion that was kind of across different industries. So it doesn't necessarily only single out, as you mentioned, aerospace or weapons manufacturing, but also considers other industries. So I was wondering what your thoughts would be, or if other Assembly members had any thoughts about omitting the specific sectors, because omitting them would still include those sectors if students kind of relate this topic to that specific sector without kind of leading students to kind of think about the specific sectors, but actually getting to the point of students commenting on whether or not these frameworks for evaluating sustainability is kind of what the question's about, unless I'm getting the question wrong and the intention behind the question, but I see more the intention, the purpose of the question is asking, do students align with Queen's University supposedly supposed to be aligning with, UN PRIs and things like that. So I'll leave that to you and as other Assembly members.
Yeah, sorry, just to respond. Thank you. Yeah, we can see, okay, just to kind of explain the reasoning behind the wording and the framing of the question. Yeah, I think that's something that we can work to amend about the question itself. The reason why we included explicit reference to aerospace and defense as a highlighted sector is because it's the most apparent amongst the student on campus breach from the UN PRI sustainability framework. But like you said, it is a broader issue relating to multiple sectors. So it would be an amendment we could consider, and it's again up for discussion as well. So do you have any? Yeah. So sorry if that answered your question. Yeah.
We'll move on to the next person.
Hi, Member Junziu, ASA's president. I thank you for bringing this up as well. It looks very well put together. I did just have a question about why you chose to put it in the referendum as opposed to a memo or another form, I guess, of getting this message out there. In terms of what Member Mika said earlier, in terms of getting student data, would you say that this is a way of getting student data? Are you going to collect this information later and then go from there? I was just wondering why you chose to go to the referendum. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. The reason why we chose the 2026 winter referendum was because we felt that it would be productive for the AMS to sort of facilitate a question such as this that we're proposing, because it offers a sense of legitimacy to the needs and the concerns of the student body. There is, to speak to your point about collection of data, it is also simultaneously we think would be beneficial for the AMS to include it within specifically the referendum for that purpose as well. So mostly it's just a way for students to feel like their voices are heard. There's been a lot of discussion at Assembly, but I'm sure you guys are aware that many undergraduates don't participate in Assembly as often. So the reasoning for the referenda was mostly due to participation and getting as many students to feel like they have a safe avenue to kind of provide their opinion, regardless of any personal stance. That's just the avenue that we can provide to them, or you guys can provide.
Can I give my question to Mika Heller?
Hi, I just have one more quick question. So kind of when looking at this, it's very similar to what was brought forward earlier, and I was just wondering if you could let us know the difference between what you're bringing up and what was passed earlier, because they seem very similar. Obviously, this one focuses more on kind of that aerospace and defense, and the other one kind of focused more on environment and sustainability. So I was just wondering if you can give us an understanding of what's the difference and why are we saying that Queen's University rather than bring it to the AMS for them to advocate on our behalf, on the students' behalf.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat? Sorry, can you clarify that last point? Why your
Yeah,
last
for
question?
sure. So when you're saying, do you agree that Queen's University investment portfolio should comply with recognized international standards, and then whatever, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's long, but it's very well written. But I was just wondering, because the AMS is already kind of bringing this up, is this kind of asking if the AMS should do it or if Queen's should generally, because we just passed a motion that AMS is going to push that to Queen's University.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So the difference between these motions, so yes, you're right, the AMS just passed a motion regarding like concerning the same general, like broadly investment concerns. The key difference for us between our motion and the one that was just passed, number 4, is having that avenue for students directly to voice their opinion through the referenda. And it's not, so just to clarify, this is just an ask of the chief, did not mean to do that. The chief returning officer to I just add that directly onto the referenda. It's not necessarily a point of an ask of the AMS to intervene in an advocacy way, as was outlined in the previous motion, the Principal's Additions Amendment, which was passed earlier. It's just simply to add a plebiscite question to the 2026 winter referenda, which happens to, pertain to some similar concerns, but it's different in the sense that it's not necessarily like a broad plan of advocacy. It's just a request that these are the concerns of the students, and we should provide an avenue for them to have a safe and democratic way to voice those concerns.
Hi. So thank you. So thank you so much for bringing it up, and I am completely for getting as much data as possible and hearing directly from the students. Understand that entirely, but to kind of second what Prem said, would you be opposed to using that safe that sort of relatively general and generic language as brought up by the AMS? Because going specifically to those sub-industries, like the aerospace industry has provided so much in terms of medical advancements, landing lights, gears, and the general aviation field in general. And to completely eradicate any funding or finances into these investments really limits a lot of future opportunities in making things more sustainable, cheaper, and more effective in students. Cheaper for the long term and this entire industry in general, and any other implications that it may have in a variety of industries that we don't know yet. Mm-hmm. So would you be opposed to using the exact same language as the AMS in the referendum? Not saying we shouldn't include it, I'm all for it, but changing the language to not include the specificity, but just getting students to think proactively about all of these investments portfolio in general.
Do I respond? Yeah, sure. Yeah, we're not opposed to making amendments to the specific wording, so long as the original principles within and the guiding goals are maintained, that integrity is maintained. I think what we're trying to get at within this plebiscite question edition is just maybe not necessarily, like you said, to have an entire industry taken out, but it's specific an identification and understanding where students' concerns lie regarding specific holdings that may be that are highlighted or targeted as highlighted as potentially holding risks or in violation of international humanitarian rights. So again, it's just gauging student opinion, but yes, to answer your point, we're not necessarily opposed to amending it to be in line with the specific language that was introduced earlier.
President Ammer, can I call for the amendment to change the question to, do you agree that Queen's University investment portfolio should be in compliance with recognized international standards of ethical and sustainable investment, including the UN Principles for Responsible Investment, and no longer invest in financial sectors or institutions identified as presenting ESG or humanitarian risks?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, if we want to just take out, we just wanted to provide that context regarding aerospace and defense as a primary, as we've mentioned earlier, it's pretty evident that that is a clear departure. But yes, I agree.
I'm going to call the question for the amended motion. All those in favor, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Any abstentions? The amended motion has passed. Are there any further points of debate for this amended motion? on the amended motion, just to clarify.
We can make another amendment on top of it.
Yes. Yes.
Jordan Belinsky, Engineering Society President. I had one point just about the referendum question overall. I feel like there's two different parts of it, and for referenda, it's supposed to gauge. It's not fair to group two questions together if two could have different answers. So for me, I'd suggest an amendment on splitting up the and no longer invest in financial sectors after. A lot of it was based on before about specifying the aerospace and defense industry. Since in engineering, we do have a lot of people that get internships and jobs post-graduation after that. I know that was amended to be removed, but I also think just in fairness of gauging how students feel kind of about both parts of the question, they should be separated as separate referenda questions.
Respond to that. We want to just state that the reasoning for that two-part it's related. So a proposal or an amendment to break the two up wouldn't necessarily change the question, because the second portion, asking to no longer invest in financial sectors, has to do and pertains with the same upholding of UN sustainability practices. To have it be separated, to asking the students if they agree with maintaining that protocol and that framework is entirely related to the second portion, because if Queens were to continue investing within any holding that violates that framework, then that's not upholding the UNPRI framework. So in regards to your amendment to break the two up, we feel that it pertains to one another. We feel that it's encompassing the whole, there's no way to have it be separated and for the integrity of the motion to be maintained, because no longer investing within any holding that is identified as presenting ESG or humanitarian risks would be a violation of Queen's University's commitment to upholding UN sustainability practices overall. So we feel that there's no way for these 2 points to be separated. Speaking to the amendment prior to take out the aerospace and defense portion, could be something that we agree with and have voted on. So perhaps that maybe speaks to a little bit more of your concerns as an engineering student. But yeah, just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you.
Member Drinziu asks as president. I just had one thing to say, just to kind of give a different perspective. In terms of removing the aerospace and defense, again, I have no issue in removing that, but at the same time, I think if your motion with your whole presentation in mind is specifically towards those industries, like the aerospace and the defense industry, and then the other industries that you mentioned as well, I believe you said the weapons manufacturing, and you had a couple of different things in there. If those are the companies you're targeting, I don't necessarily think that they should be taken out of the wording, specifically because this is just more of an agreement of an opinion question. It's do you agree that Queens should? It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to give a recommendation based on the findings or anything like that. It's just a question of opinion, I guess, in the referendum for students. So if you're trying to gauge student opinion on those industries specifically, I feel like perhaps the industries should be mentioned, if that makes sense, to not make it so vague. And if you're trying to get data on those industries specifically, I feel like it would be valuable to mention them. If you're not trying to get a vague opinion, is what I'm trying to say, maybe?
I think we'll just hear another point. I think someone wants to speak.
Does anyone want to speak on this point?
Paramedic Smith Commerce Society President. I kind of just want to reiterate my point about what the question is trying to get at. I think this question is trying to get at, are the frameworks and standards that Queen's University holds in its investment portfolio be upheld? And I think that that's the question, and it should be related to all industries, right? Not just specific ones. By omitting the specific industries in the question, you give an opportunity for the other industries that you mentioned in your presentation, not just the aerospace and defense industry, but the other industries that you mentioned, right, consideration. I also had a quick question, maybe someone else can answer this, if it would be possible to add hyperlinks to the actual like definitions of like UN principles for responsible investment, since I know that you gave this kind of info and like definitions, but not all students would have access to this or readily available access. So would it be possible to add hyperlinks to the at least UN principles for responsible investment, ESG, as well as Queen's University's investment portfolio or its current policy? Because I think that students would need an accessible way to access this information, and they're not necessarily going to be looking at all three of those things in isolation.
Information to that answer, yes, we can. Simply voting lets you do that. And I do agree with your point. I think taking out the specific sub-industries just helps it focus in more on what the purpose of the question is and what the goal of the question is in terms of kind of collecting student interest towards what Queen's investment portfolio should look like. And that is something that if we want to add an amendment to say to ensure that those links are hyperlinked onto the Simply Voting, if we do decide to add this onto the winter referenda ballot, that's feasible.
Mika Heller. I just had one more quick question. When you're looking at this, are you also going to consider what the university has already stated in the past? So like, I know that there's been a lot of discussions about responsible investing, divestments and all that. And I know that the university has made statements on whether they're going to divest or not divest from certain industries. Will you be taking that into consideration when we're looking at this motion?
We feel that we are taking into consideration what the university has stated. But this piece about the question is especially pertaining to like student opinion, regardless of what the university has stated prior or made any statements in the past. This is directly directed at students. Of course, we are aware, like we've included statements from the 2025 Responsible Investing Report. All of that has been considered. Where it's simply just a matter of gauging student opinion. So it's like separate from whatever the administration has made. Like we've stated, it's trying to understand what the undergraduates understand first and like how they feel about the nature of Queen's University's shared investment pool and the nature of their investments. And we hope from that will provide a substantial gauge on the matter itself on campus.
Hi, Commissioner Schmidt, Environmental Sustainability. I just want to add to people's mindset with this question. To be honest, I'm very bothered by this idea that students don't care about sustainability and human rights. I think as someone who talks to students every day about sustainability, I think students really do care. I think there's a large population of students who do care, and I think one issue among many that we have with sustainability amongst like student unions is that they don't have a space to voice this opinion. But I can say from the way that I've communicated with students who are concerned with these issues, like sustainability is no longer like a reusable cup. Sustainability has a lot to do with the things that are being discussed right now in this motion. Like it is a holistic approach. And I just want people to keep in mind the fact that a lot of faculty societies maybe don't have a sustainability commission or someone really like designated to it, or like an organization that is at the same scale as like say the CES. And just because we're not hearing these opinions doesn't mean that they don't exist. And I would just really like people to keep that in mind.
I know we can't make changes on the amendment after it's passed, but I don't know if this is just for simplicity's sake, could we expand on ESG to actually identify what ESG stands for, because it's not actually mentioned in the rest of it if we are to include it? And if we are able to amend it, I kind of agree on either separating it to 2 points, or if you really want to break it down more, you could do the first question up until responsible investment and then ask sub-questions about what industries you think should be. So rather like a multiple choice. I don't know if that's possible.
President Ammer, to be able to break it down like that into multiple subsections, we would not be able to do, and I think would just be really hard data for us to trace or even be able to report on in terms of what our capabilities with simply voting are. So unfortunately, that's not something we can do. What we can do, though, is expand on what the abbreviations mean and ensure that there is hyperlinks so people can ensure that they are educating themselves on this. If everybody's okay with that, can I call for the amendments to ensure that all the abbreviations are in their long form and that there are links in all of them, as well as call for a blind vote on this motion? Can I call for a blind vote, please?
Yes, we will call for a blind vote. Seconder, please. Yes.
What? You're seconder? I'm seconder.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you. We have this QR code for the blind vote. Oh.
Mika Heller, just wondering when we're actually voting. Like, this just tells us to put in our student number. This doesn't actually let us vote. Oh, I guess that just updated because on my account it doesn't.
Yes, sorry.
Alan Savini, ACES rep to the AMS. I was just curious why we're doing a blind vote, just for like your reasoning behind it, that's all.
Any member can ask for a blind vote whenever they'd like during a general assembly. Any member can.
Yes. We just have one question up there. Oh, I think it's about. Yes.
I would just like to, I thought the QR code thing was to put in your student ID to confirm that you are indeed a person within an undergrad or something like that.
It was initially, but then we had the CGO confirm and everyone lined up, if you remember. So
yeah, I know. I did it before the lineup. And unfortunately, I saved my response because I did not realize that it was going to be like a.
Yeah, I understand.
So is there a way to fix that, or?
We will make another form right now. Thank you for bringing that up. A new form will be created, so please hold off of scanning this QR code, and it'll just take a minute. Yes, Commissioner Sai.
Sorry, I was just wondering, like, why we're calling the vote now? Because I think there were still people that wanted to have discussion points, or we're just calling it.
President Ammer?
I had called the vote because I think a lot of us has kind of started circling around the same two things. But if there is, and that's up to the speaker to decide whether or not they believe in accepting the call for the vote or asking for further debate. So that is something you can If you
Does
think that there's
anyone-
further debate that the speaker should be entertaining at the moment, then that's up to the speaker, not up to me.
Are there any new points that don't pertain to specifications within what topics are brought up or dividing the question? Yes, Commissioner Sack.
This is about specification and alignment between what was shown on the screen and what was given to us in the Appendix M, because there is a discrepancy in the Appendix M says E.G. and the screen said I.E. and they have significantly different meanings. That's been removed? Okay. Okay. Just clarify. Thank you.
Are there any new points that don't pertain to what we have been talking about? Yes.
I have two mics coming towards me. I was just wondering, because we've already put this up and some people have voted, if that can just be deleted off of their.
We're making a new form.
Okay,
So
but all
everyone
the
will have a clear vote.
If this form is still active, people can still access who has voted on what. In order for it to be a blind vote, the form should be deleted entirely.
She's completely remaking
Okay.
a new one. So this
That
one
was-
will just be thrown out. Yeah. Thank you. I'll just. Yes.
Real quick, just point of clarification about the actual ballot. It was said that there was no way to do like a multi-select or anything like that, but there is a way to do a ranked ballot of importance. I just was wondering if that could be considered maybe. I'm not really sure. I know that I don't know, just to consider, because it was shut down pretty quickly, so I just want to make sure that we're considering all options.
You can do ranked, but you can't do, or like you can do ranked or not multi, but with the fact that this would go out, if it's approved, with the winter referenda and the fact that we would already have executive elections on there as well as the referenda questions on there, that would make the Simply Voting link kind of like weird and crash, because the Simply Voting has limits to the amount of questions, the way the questions are set out. So it just would not become a proper experience for anybody that has to actually fill out that battle with the executive elections that are already there, as well as the referenda questions would include try-review questions, new fee questions, and then increasing fee questions. Does that make a little bit of sense?
No, I totally agree. I'm just, like, is there no way to, sorry. I clicked this button. I don't know
Don't
if
worry,
connected,
it's not
but
related.
At the exact same time. No, I was just wondering, is there no way to try? Like, that's just, like, I totally get it. I don't know. It's just been done before, so that's why I'm wondering why it can't be tried, but that's all.
VP Parisa?
If we
I know we called to question. Can I call to further debate? Because we're still receiving questions about this, and I think it is still should be discussed because people are, asking points of clarification and whatnot. If I'm mistaken, excuse me, but because I'm still hearing questions, I recommend or ask the speaker to extend that debate.
I will extend the debate as long as the topics are not redundant and cyclical to the previous points. Does anyone have any new points to bring up specifically for other members or for the presenters?
Yes. Commissioner Balai, just to kind of go off of what Ivana was trying to say, the plebiscite question was also, I think, more of a yes or no. So I think in terms of ranking, you would have to first say, if you would only be able to rank if you actually just agreed with that motion and then rank what your priorities would be. So I think that's another difficulty that would add to adding that option as well, because it wouldn't make sense to rank something that you don't agree with. So I think just keeping it as a yes, no, abstain type answer or option, I think would be the best way to go about that referenda question.
Thank you. Are there any new points or questions for the movers? All right, now I will call the question. This QR code is the correct one, so please scan it. I will give everyone 2 minutes.
Point of information, it still asks for your first and last name and your student number. It just says it won't collect your email address.
It is secret in a way that no assembly members here know what you're stating.
Yes. VP Parisa? For point of clarification, can you read out the final motion?
Yes. So we amended it initially to be non-specific, and then we also amended it to include the hyperlinks and expand on any abbreviations. So with that in consideration, it would state, the referendum would state, do you agree that Queen's University's investments portfolio should be in compliance with recognized international standards of ethical and sustainable investment, including the UN Principles for Responsible Investment, and no longer invest in financial sectors or institutions identified as presenting ESG, which will be expanded, or humanitarian risks. And then the IE will be removed to not say the sub-industry, things like aerospace and defense. So it will be non-specific. Yes?
Point of clarification, I just wanted to ensure that the 3 hyperlinks are Queen's University's policy on responsible investment would be the first link. The second link would be a link to UNPRI. And then the third link would be for defining ESG. Okay, thank you.
All right, 30 more seconds for the QR code, and then we will move on. Has anyone not gotten the opportunity to scan the QR code? All right, thank you very much. This marks the end of new business. We will now move into the discussion period. Oh, right. The amended motion has passed. All right, we will now move into the discussion period. Upon the amended initial motion, we will not be discussing the first topic. Could I please get a mover and a seconder for adjournment? President Ammer, thank you. Thank you. Amended.